Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Owner's Box After Dark. I am your host, Mark Farinella, the former assistant sports editor, Patriots beat writer, sports columnist, and do-everything guy for a newspaper down here in southeastern Massachusetts. And you probably know which one it was. I'm not going to give him a free ad. It is April 22nd, 2021, and it has been a while since I've been here, and I'm really sorry about that. It's taken me a little while to get back behind the microphone and behind the camera. If I look a little misty, and I thought it was dripping a little bit, it's because I just had some excellent homemade pork barbecue that I make myself on the grill out in my backyard. I make it into so I can have sandwiches with it, and there's a reason for that. Why would a born and bred New Englander and an Italian to boot want to have what I would equate to be close to Southern pork barbecue? Well, as I've probably told you at some point, I have roots in Florida. And my mother's from a little town called Williston, Florida. She lived in Williston, then Tifton, Georgia, and then Williston again. And then when she was I think about 18, she moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and worked at the Jacksonville Navy Yard, where she met my dad, who was a chief petty officer in the U.S. Navy. They knew each other for a week, got married, and the rest is history. But every year, we would make pilgrimages back down to Williston to visit my mother's parents. And then after a while, too, her brother would show up. He had a rough time in Korea and kind of disappeared for a few years, but then he came back into the fold, and it was good to have the whole family together. But my dad and I, being kind of outcasts because we weren't Southerners, I mean, let's face it, my dad swore the Italian guy that he was, and me, spawn of the devil, I guess, we had to find our own way for a lot of things down there. And one thing we discovered was this really great old-time barbecue joint. It was on the other side of Williston. Williston was a little town, and when Interstate 75 came through the middle of Florida, it really isolated Williston. Williston used to be kind of a crossroads on the way to someplace else. Then it stopped being a crossroads to anywhere. And so the town was kind of run down. And also, you got to remember, this was in the 60s when I remember most of it. And just before kind of the Civil Rights Act finally straightened everything out, or at least attempted to anyway. So in Williston, you had the white folk on one side of the town, and you had the African Americans on the other side of town. And rarely did they meet. In fact, when I first started going down there, they still had the colored entrances, quote unquote, only for the African American folk. They couldn't go into the movie theater through the same entrance as the white people. Come a long way, still have a long way to go, as today's headlines definitely indicate. But in those days, you crossed the railroad tracks on Route 27, US 27, going towards Ocala, and you were immediately out of Williston proper. But there was this little shack on the side of the road. It was called Frog's Place, and they made just the most amazing barbecue. They had this old smoker, this giant old smoker next to the building, and you could see the smoke coming out of it at any time of day. And you'd go in there and you would order either a pork or beef sandwiches, or you could get ribs if you wanted to. But the sandwiches were the real joy because you could get them quickly and you could eat them quickly, and they were amazing. You sink your teeth into those, and the taste of the smoked pork and the barbecue sauce that they used infused into it, and it wasn't like it was sliced. It was chopped up into little pieces, and it just went down so good. And then, of course, then all of a sudden the spiciness would kick in, and you'd be like, oh, wow, for a while. And if you're a little kid who's about maybe 10 years old and eating that for the first time, no wonder I had irritable bowel syndrome for the first 50 years of my life. Anyway, I've spent my life searching for a way to duplicate that flavor. I tried every barbecue sauce on the shelf, all of the big brands. They were just all too sweet and syrupy and especially as a diabetic, that doesn't help me any, because most of it is some sort of sugar, one way or the other. But I finally found something that works. And one of these days I'll make a video and I'll show you the process to make this stuff, because I don't have a smoker. I don't use the barbecue enough to warrant the expenditure on something that's going to smoke meat for 12 hours before I can eat it. So, but what I do is I can take your basic pork cutlets, I can put them on the grill for about 20 minutes, and then chop them up in a food processor, and then infuse them with barbecue sauce, cook them a little bit more, and then I've got this great stuff. Now, here's the key, and this is not an endorsement. I mean, this is not an endorsed or paid commercial, but I got to say, this stuff right here, Stubbs Original Barbecue Sauce, this stuff is as close as I have come to the flavor of what they used to put in the pork over at Frog's Place in Williston, Florida. And then this is, I think, I can't remember where this is out of. Austin, Texas. Okay. There's all sorts of different kinds of barbecue once you get below the Mason-Dixon line. You have your basic Carolina barbecue, which is sauce-based. And then you have more of the, I would say there's, if you get farther west you go, it's more based in spices and rubbing the stuff into it. But in the south too, there's two schools of it, and sometimes it meshes together. And part of it that meshed together in Williston was the flavor of this with some rubs, a little bit of a rub to go into it too, I think. But once I cook this stuff and make it, it is as close as I've ever gotten to the real barbecue that I love from my youth. And so I hadn't made it in a while because I haven't been able to get out for the grill for a while, but I've been getting back out there. The weather's not as awful, although it's kind of wild tonight. And so I made some, and wow. And the best part is you make some, you think that maybe 3 or 4 cutlets might be too much, but you can just put it in the refrigerator and use it the next day, heat it up, and throw more barbecue sauce on it. And I'll tell you, it is just delicious. So those are my southern roots. While there may be all sorts of other problems down there, the one thing that isn't a problem is barbecue. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention it. I am recording this from the palatial confines of Fulton Pond Studios in Mansfield, Massachusetts, where it is about 40 degrees outside, and it's windy. The gusts are supposed to be around 40, 45 miles per hour. I'm worried about a couple of trees and some of the things out in my yard. My plastic chair on the steps in front has already blown halfway across the yard, and that's not serious damage or anything like that. The drink of choice tonight is Diet Dr. Pepper. You know what? I've tried the new one. They have a Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar version, and it's pretty good. It's a little sweeter than Diet DP, but you know what? I like it. And the fact that there's no sugar in it works for me. So, Mood Candle. We've gone a different route. This is it. This is the Yankee Candle Sicilian Lemon. How could I refuse buying this one? Smells great. Everything is lemony fresh. Lemony fresh in here. It is absolutely. And you know what? It smells like limoncello. That drink, that little kind of really lemony type drink that you can buy. That's a cordial or something like that. It's really fabulous. And I figured it's springtime. I wanted to freshen up this place a little bit, so that's the candle I bought recently. I still have my apple ones, and I still have my evergreen ones, and I'm trying to milk them for as long as I can have them. Okay, second topic of the night here. I know it's been a while since I've done an episode, and I apologize for that. There have been many reasons. One of them was that I had, here I've just been talking about barbecue. I had one of the worst cases of food poisoning that I've had in the last 15 years. Oh, man. It was after a game. I went and got a pizza somewhere. I won't mention who because I don't want to, hey, it happens. It's not a regular occurrence at this place. It just happened to be something something went wrong. I got home. I ate it. I felt fine. About 4.5 hours later, it was off to the races, and it was that way for 3 or almost 4 days. I was not in great distress. Didn't feel bad at all, really. Just had to keep making a certain trip to a certain porcelain bowl. I know I'm not going to go into TMI. I try not to anyway. But no, it was rough. And while I did feel good throughout, in terms of not throwing up or anything like that, I probably lost a few pounds, but you could hardly tell. I mean, let's face it, I got a ways to go. That kind of, I didn't really want to sit here in front of the camera because I wouldn't have been able to sit here for long in front of the camera. And I, certainly can't take the camera in there with me, and you don't want to see that anyway. Other than that, too, I was also, in between all this, I had been very busy doing my job as a play-by-play announcer for high school sports. I was busy doing high school volleyball and football for North TV, North Attleboro Community Television, covering King Philip Regional High School. And we also did recently a Tri-County Regional High School football game up in Franklin with my broadcast partner, Glenn Farley. And, of course, Alex Salaki, my old friend, is my partner for the volleyball games because he used to be the coach at Zavarian Brothers High in Westwood. And having a blast. I think I just love doing it, and it would also help that the King Philip girls in one of the matches that we covered had one of those 5-set contests that went right down to the end, and they ended up beating the team that had beaten them before, and that they ended up tied at the top of the divisional standings. So King Philip won a share of the Hockomock League Kelly Rex Division title, having beaten that team, and then when they played their last game, they were completely dominant against Taunton High. And it was those are fun to do, and certainly Alex's knowledge of volleyball is helpful to me, and I think I got better at it as I went along. Football, I like doing football play-by-play, and I think I'm getting better at it if I want to pat myself on the back a little bit. But I'll tell you, before I get into the funny part, I just will remind you that the last game of this quote-unquote Fall 2 season is going to be Friday night, the 23rd, probably today as you watch this. It will be the 68th annual meeting of King Philip and Franklin. And, I forgot to mention, I also had a tooth pull, but I'll get into that later. King Philip and Franklin, they would normally be Thanksgiving Day rivals. Obviously, there was no Thanksgiving Day game in the 2020 calendar year, and this would have... They're not really going to consider this a Thanksgiving Day game. It's a game that they're playing, but it still doesn't affect the yearly rivalry on the holiday, which reached 60 games last year. So, but it's always fun to watch these two teams play. King Philip is 3-3. Franklin is 3-3. A lot of changes in both teams from the last time they met, but it should be competitive, and hopefully the weather will be okay. It's going to be a little on the cool side, but hey, Thanksgiving is in November, right? So if I'm covering a game in April, it should still be a little cooler than it would be in July. The game will be televised. It starts at 7 o'clock. It will be live streamed by the folks at North TV on their Plainville channel. Go to northtv.net, and when you just find the little box, the red box that says live streaming, click on it. There'll be 4 options. You click on Plainville channel, and that's where you can get Glenn Farley and me doing the play-by-play. And starts at 7, and we hope to have a good game to bring to you. Now, our last game was last week. Now, again, I mentioned we did Tri-County on Saturday, but on Friday night, we did the game between King Philip and Stoughton High School. And, they're old Hockomock League rivals, although they haven't played each other much in recent years because of the way the league split into 2 divisions. But this was this game, you just got to get the picture set here. The first game we covered in March, it was 70 degrees out and beautiful. Absolutely. Glenn and I were sitting in the stands doing the game that day, and we couldn't believe our good fortune to have a perfect day to cover and announce a high school football game. Now, we didn't get to cover any other games until the end of the season because of pandemic restrictions, we could not go on the road and cover road games. So we could only do home games this year, and King Philip had a lot of road games on their schedule, most of them, in fact. But they did play this game at home, and the weather was awful. I'm not going to lie to you. It was awful. It was 36 degrees at game time, windy, cold, rainy, turned to sleet, turned to snow, turned back to rain, cold, sleet, wind the whole time. Now, we were in the press box, and I thank the folks at King Philip for letting us in. That has been one of those COVID-19 issues that we could not go into the press box before. They kind of threw that out. First of all, Glenn and I are both vaccinated, which helps. And, we wore our masks dutifully, which causes our glasses to fog up. We can't see what we're calling, which is another exciting thing of that. But the biggest problem for us is keeping the electronics dry. That's why we couldn't be out in the stands. Now, our cameraman is a young man named Scott Tooker, and he is excellent. My hat's off to him. He's done a great job for all the football and volleyball and basketball that we've worked together with this year, and I hope to be working with him soon, for more games when we get to maybe baseball and softball and, to another football season. But we'll see what happens with that. But he tried to set up his camera outside. Now, they wouldn't let him up on the roof, but he was on the kind of a ledge next to the press box, and he had a good vantage point. But it's also high, and it's windy, and so he had this thing that looked like almost like a patio umbrella, something you would get for a table out in a patio, say. And he had it lashed to the guardrails with bungee cords and all that. And he figured it was doing a pretty good job of protecting him. So we went through the announcements at the beginning of the game. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Farinella with Glenn Farley, blah, 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 kickoff. And then the first play from scrimmage, the Stoughton quarterback had the ball sail over his head in shotgun formation. He runs back, tries to recover it. King Philip recovers. So King Philip gets the ball, and right after that, well, just listen to what I describe right after that play. Jonah Lee with the opening kickoff return for Stoughton brings it to the 31-yard line, where we will start. It is 36 degrees here at MacTaz Field. The wind is coming out of the north-northwest at 19 miles per hour. Feels a lot colder than that. And the Weather Channel said there was a 60% chance of rain. Well, I think they're 100% right on that. John Burke is the quarterback for Stoughton. Ball is loose. On the ground. Recovered by Gately. Ryan Gately picks up the ball. And a turnover on the first offensive play for the Stoughton Black Knights.
Couldn't start any better for the Warriors, and there goes an umbrella flying.
And I have a feeling that might have been our cameraman's umbrella.
Through the stands. I believe it was.
Oh, my heavens. It is windy out there, folks. There are gusts like you wouldn't believe. So we will continue to report on this. I don't know what we're seeing right now, but...
Well, we're seeing KP first and 10 at the
17 or 18-yard line. 18-yard line of Stoughton. Yeah, how about that? You didn't see it on camera, but for where Glenn and I were sitting, all we could see was this giant umbrella soaring past us. And it landed in the stands. Fortunately, it missed some people because we were sitting down there. They did allow a few people in these games these days, and nobody got hurt. And it was a scary thing. And as I said, well, we're just going to keep talking because we don't know what we're seeing. We don't have a monitor while we're working. And Scott managed to tough it out for at the end of that first series, and you'll see the touchdown run. But the funny thing is that he just came in and says, "I can't stand out here. We got to We got to bring it inside. Fine. We did stop televising, and we did lose our live feed because of that. But he came in, and he basically the tripod that he had was too big for the press box, and the windows are kind of fogged over. They have to work on those over there, but they got these thermal pane windows that unfortunately got water in between the panes, and so some of the panes are impossible to see out of. So he had to basically hold the camera by his hands through the open window that we had. And of course, Glenn and I were sitting in front of open windows as well. And he had to basically pan and hold the camera steady as he could to follow the action the rest of the night. At times it's a little wobbly, but I think he did a hell of a job, to be honest. I know I could not have held the camera that well. Unfortunately, it would be great if you had a smaller tripod that you could put the camera on top of, and I think he's working on something about that. But under the circumstances, he did a great job. And I absolutely know he could not hold he probably couldn't feel his fingers at the end of the night, because I know I couldn't. Sitting in front of that window with the stuff coming in on us, I had to have a towel draped over our mixing board so that wouldn't get wet. It was brutal, and I know we were complaining a lot about it during the broadcast, but I also kept saying to everybody that, we're not doing any heavy lifting here. I just want to give all the props in the world to the people who are out there, whether it's the fans in the stands or the players or the coaching staffs, whatever. Those people that were out there playing in this weather, which was almost worse than anything I've ever been forced to cover as a print writer in my many years as a football writer for the paper, and for like 40 plus years. I think it ranks right up there among the best nights. But I can tell you one thing for sure, one thing for absolutely certain: it was the worst football game I've ever covered in April. By the way, unfortunately, King Philip lost 20-13. King Philip had scored all 13 points in the first half. I missed one of the field goals, unfortunately, and then when we came back, I made a big deal out of the field goal kicker kicking into the wind and getting a 31-yard field goal, but then I blew his name. I unfortunately called him Mitchell Kelly. His name is Matthew Kelly. There was a kid who had gotten hurt for Stoughton just before this happened. His name was Mitchell something or other, and I think that's why I had Mitchell on the brain. So I'm there pronouncing, and Mitchell Kelly, you are officially a weapon. And then I realized, oh crap. I said, no, wait, I'm sorry, that's Matthew Kelly. And Glenn went with it. He could. I told him, anytime I do that, just clobber me, hit me over the head. I'll figure it out quicker. But all things considered, I still think we did give them a good telecast. Unfortunate part, in the second half, Stoughton they figured out to run around the King Philip defense and not try to go through it. King Philip is very strong up the middle, but they were not fast enough to catch up with the two very good running backs that Stoughton has, and so they scored 3 second-half touchdowns, and that was that. And I saw actually one of them, because the other two, my glasses were fogged up. Because when you're wearing a mask, as we are still wearing masks, your breath comes up like that. And on a night like that, when it's barely above freezing, that warm breath is going to come up and immediately fog these glasses. Got to the point, I think it was with one of the touchdown runs, I just had my glasses up like this. Nearsighted as I am, I took a guess at which guy got the ball, and as he came running around me for a 66-yard touchdown run, I could actually see his number. So at least I was right. I made the right guess, and I was able to call that touchdown. But I got to have Bob Sosi on here one of these days. I got to talk to a pro who has to deal with some of these things. And speaking of Bob Sosi and football, I just got off of a Zoom conference call with members of the Patriots Hall of Fame nominating committee. And I'm a member of that and have been for 15-plus years. And it was a 1.5-hour call, and we all had our screen all quartered, so I could see there were usually about 12 people on the screen, maybe another one down below it. But this year we didn't select nominees, and there's a good reason for that. This year was kind of devoted to reminiscing about the past. the Patriots are not going to have a fan vote this year. We are not going to select 3 potential candidates, and the fans aren't going to have the opportunity to vote because the pandemic interrupted everything last year. And in that situation, the process of honoring last year's inductee, defensive end Richard Seymour, was interrupted. He never got his ceremony. He never got the attention that he should have gotten for being inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. So Stacey James, the media relations czar, I like to call him, and he is, he's the guy who basically runs this situation. He sent us an email a while back and said, look, we're not going to lessen it for Richard Seymour. We will go ahead and operate as if he was selected this year. And so that when the schedule comes out, and it should be out pretty soon, there will be an opportunity. And hopefully if COVID doesn't cause any further disruption in the entire situation, because, people cluster very closely in these ceremonies that are held in the little plaza there between the Patriots Hall of Fame and the CBS whatever it is restaurant. So they don't want to have to deny him that. I mean, it's always kind of fun, and a lot of people enjoy it. So they're going to have the ceremony at some place this year, sometime to be determined. And then, we'll just come back next year. We'll do the process as we usually do, which is debate the merits of past players, and then we will pick 3 nominees, and then you folks out there will get the chance to vote for them. And but I think it was a good idea by Stacey because he sort of set this up as a way of honoring our longest tenured, our most senior member of the committee, and probably the last of the real old school reporters. My friend Ron Hobson, formerly of the Patriot Ledger. You all will remember Hobby with his deep voice and his high fellow. He was a writer for the Patriot Ledger since the 1960s. He joined the beat in 1961 full-time, which was the second year of the Patriots' existence. And he's also one of the touchdown twins on WEEI radio. And you remember on Eddie Andelman's show, you would remember that the experts were Ron Hobson of the Patriot Ledger and Kevin Mannix of the Boston Herald. And so he had a long tenure doing that. He's now retired. So is Kevin, and so is practically every other writer from the 1960s to just before the Bill Belichick era, and so am I. I'm retired too. So it was fun. It was fun to get together to converse and to chat about some of the joys and the foibles of being on that beat and covering pro football in Boston before it became the Cadillac of the beats. Let's face it, for the longest time, the Red Sox guys thought that they were the ones that whose feces did not stink. Somebody's going to hate me for that. The Patriots have become the primary beat in town now because the fact all these years of championships, the dynasty, the Super Bowls, everything, they've almost outstripped Red Sox Nation. I think people, once the Red Sox started winning a few in the last, since 2003, I think that they've kind of fought their way back. But last year's team was awful, and the ratings on Nesson were terrible. Now this year's team is showing some life, and we'll see how that goes. But right now, we have to say that maybe New England is more of a football area than it ever was before. And so the guys on the beat now, they're the kings. But there were a lot of funny stories. I could share some of them here, but we're already at 28 minutes, so I really shouldn't. And I was going to record some of it, then I thought, no, this is a private conversation, so I did not record any of it. But it was just good to see a lot of the people who were there. I don't get to see them regularly now, and in my retirement, I have come to look forward to these meetings of the Hall of Fame committee. So we'll hopefully do it again next year when things, I hope, will be normal. And but it was fun, and it is always good. And given that some of our members have gone on to their rewards, those of us who continue to be here, it's even more special to continue to see them. Okay, break for a commercial, and when I come back, I am going to talk about some more football, something a little bit different. The folks in Attleboro and North Attleboro have done a terrific thing because of these pandemics. As you know, they've had the longest tenured rivalry in high school football in the area. They were going to reach number 100 last year, but did not reach it because of the pandemic. Now, this year, with the Fall 2 season, they didn't really want to call this the 100th meeting on the holiday. They can't because it's not on a holiday. So they've come up with 2 celebrations for the price of one. And one will take place on Saturday morning when North Attleboro and Attleboro play at North Attleboro's Community Field. And then the other celebration will take place, hopefully, in November at Attleboro High's Tozier Cassidy Field when Attleboro and North will play their 100th game on the holiday. And we'll talk about that with coaches Don Johnson of North Attleboro and Mike Strachan of Attleboro right after the break.
デコ交換のフロートを作ってみようと思います。フォークを入れます。アイスを入れます。完成です。はい。かわいい。どうかな？これにしましょう。3つ。かわいい。私はレモンが好きなので、AHS スペシャル。恋なんてそのことよ。冬も1リットル。開けたての美味しさ続く。
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Owner's Box after dark. Episode 44 of these. That was my friend Alex's number in high school basketball back in the 1970s. In fact, and we always joke a little bit about that because in those days, and I'm not sure why, they never seemed to buy the same numbers for home and road uniforms. If you wore number 44 at home, you probably were issued number 45 for your dark-colored road jersey. I don't know what the story was. Maybe it was some sort of archaic thing where the coaches didn't want to tip their hands, somehow confuse you and the player, hey, who's that number 45? We've never seen him before, even though he scores 20 points a game every week. It was weird, but that was life back before indoor plumbing. So, yes, number 44. And we just did number 34 of the Owner's Box, the original Gangsta, the audio podcast, which had most of what we're talking about here. By the way, I'm Mark Farinella, in case you didn't know. If you didn't know, then what are you doing here? Most of what was in episode 34 we'll have a couple of snippets here right now. As I mentioned before the commercial break, over in Attleboro and North Attleboro, they were going to have the 100th meeting of the 2 teams on Thanksgiving Day last November, and COVID-19 disrupted that. That is, it's been a kind of a poignant thing to think about something like that, because here in my hometown, Mansfield, which is just a few miles away, we have been playing Foxborough on the holiday, home of the Patriots, so on and so forth, but just over a hill, 3 miles, no, not even that much. That has been a good rivalry for a long time. Now, that rivalry was a little different because it did not start on Thanksgiving. It basically started in 1925 as 2 neighboring teams playing each other, but Mansfield did not, as you know, there's a holiday Thanksgiving special rivalry thing that goes on here in Massachusetts and kind of wreaks havoc with the scheduling, especially for the playoffs, but we've been doing Thanksgiving football for a century, and there seems to be no desire to stop doing it. So that is the game where you play your most special, your most hated rival. Hopefully most of the time respectfully. And so Foxborough Mansfield originally did not play on the holiday. They, in fact, during the 20s and then into the 30s and all the way up to 1946, Mansfield played other schools on Thanksgiving. For a while, they played Oliver Ames High School from Northeastern, another neighboring town. I think they may have played 3 or 4 holiday games against them. And then for a while, Mansfield, being kind of good in football with all these rugged Italian brutes that lived in this town. We started feeling our oats a little bit, so they decided to play Taunton, which was a much larger school even then. So from 1933, I think it was, till 1946, Mansfield played on the holiday, and they did not fare very well against Taunton in those days. They won maybe 4 out of the 13 or 14 games that were played. In fact, my father, who played end at Mansfield High School and is number 13 in the photo I'm putting up here, he never played against Foxborough. There was a gap in that period where Foxborough did not score a point against Mansfield in their first 8 meetings, and I think it was something like 184-0. So Foxborough didn't want to play us anymore. So they stopped playing, and then kind of came back to a non-Thanksgiving type of situation later on. Well, finally, in 1946, Mansfield had enough of getting beaten up by Taunton. So the next year, they and Foxborough had negotiated and said, "Yep, let's play on Thanksgiving and let's do it." And they've done it ever since. In fact, Mansfield still won about a few games by prohibitive scores until Foxborough hired away Mansfield's coach to be their coach. The fellow's name was John Sertus, and I'm very friendly with his son, Louis Sertus, who actually played. He was the captain, I think, of the football team the year before I graduated. John Sertus was a brilliant young coach, had done great things with Mansfield over several years. I'm not sure exactly how long his tenure was, probably about 7 years, I think. And so Foxborough just made him the proverbial offer you can't refuse.
Come on over to Foxborough. We make you the offer you can't refuse.
And he didn't refuse it. And right off the bat, the first year, they beat Mansfield 14-0. And it's been really a great Thanksgiving Day rivalry. Mansfield has a pretty big edge in wins. It's only a 3-win difference, Mansfield with the edge, since they started playing on Thanksgiving. So it's been very close, back and forth. And even though Mansfield grew very large for a while and Foxborough shrunk to become a small school, the competitiveness of the rivalry has never gone. But point of all that, COVID struck. And so as a result, Mansfield and Foxborough will not play within the 2020 cycle, I guess you might want to call it. Obviously, they couldn't play on Thanksgiving. They were going to play in the last game of this wedge season, as they call it. And 2 weeks ago, several COVID-19 cases popped up on the Foxborough roster. They had to cancel a game against Franklin, and then the bad news came down is that they could not play against Mansfield. So on the record books, it doesn't affect the Thanksgiving Day record any. This was going to be the 90th meeting of the two schools since 1925. Not all consecutive, but since 1938, they have been consecutive. And now it's going to just go down in the record books as 2020 did not play, parentheses, pandemic. Hopefully, all will be good, and Mansfield and Foxborough will be able to play again in November. In the meantime, Mansfield coach Mike Redding, the athletic director as well, has picked up Marshfield, a very good team. I jokingly call that the typographical error bowl because for many years, especially in the 70s and 80s, the copy editors on the sports desk at the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald often made the mistake of calling Mansfield Marshfield because it's spelled similarly. And I think once the Hockomock League got really good, they stopped making that mistake, fortunately. But yeah, Mansfield is 5-0, and Marshfield is 4-0, and they will play Friday night, maybe tonight if you're watching us then. And that should be an outstanding game. I mean, that's a really quality game. And they've met several times in the playoffs in recent years, so that would be fun to watch. And I would watch it if not for the fact that I'll be working the King Philip Franklin game. Anyway, how this all comes back around to North Attleboro and Attleboro. Well, they were facing the same situation, not with COVID, but with the postponement. So here's a case where civic leaders and school administration and the athletic department, they all got together and said, we got to do something special. There are seniors here who have been denied the opportunity to play in a really milestone game. So here's what they came up with, and I like it. They are calling the game on Saturday morning, and they're playing at 10 o'clock in the morning like they would on Thanksgiving. They're going to call that the Century Game, although I've heard it referred to also as the Centennial Game, but the patches they've made up say Century Game, so that's what I'll call it. And they're going to play that one to recognize the 100th anniversary of North Attleboro High School football. It's legit. That's when North started playing. Then, in November, they will play the official 100th meeting on the holiday, and that will be at Attleboro's Tozier Cassidy Field, as it was supposed to be last year. So it works out. The kids in Attleboro will have the opportunity to be the hosts, and North Attleboro gets a special moment of its own here. So basically they've created two anniversaries out of one, and it's great. And people have gotten behind it in the towns. They've made these terrific-looking throwback uniforms. Really nice. Red and white right now. Red for the Bombardiers, who'll be the home team. For the Rocketeers, rather. They'll be the home team. And the white ones with blue trim for the Attleboro Blue Bombardiers. And they've got special patches on their helmets that celebrate the 100th aspect of it all. And, North TV will be doing the game live with Peter Gay, Jared Ware, and Del Malloy doing the commentary. I don't get to do that. That's all right. I work King Philip. I'm fine. I'm happy. I've worked one Thanksgiving Day game with those guys, and I enjoyed it. And it was 10 degrees, and it was one of the coldest days I've ever spent anywhere outside in the 2018 game, and terrific. But I won't talk about that right now. The whole atmosphere is great. They had a press conference the other day at Community Field, and so I took the opportunity to talk to the two coaches, Don Johnson of North Attleboro. No, he's not the guy from Miami Vice. He's not Dakota Johnson's father. No. Donnie played for North Attleboro back in the 70s, and he went to Holy Cross, and he came back, and he spent more than 40 years involved with North Attleboro High School football. And I'll tell you the truth, he still looks as young as the day he graduated. So it's obviously been good for him. They have an unbeaten record right now. They're 5-0, and they are looking forward to playing well in this game. But I asked Don about the aspect of whether they feared that something that might happen to them that happened to Mansfield and Foxborough, and whether that might interrupt the whole circumstance and really just continue to break the hearts of people who love football in those two towns. And these two towns really do love football. And here's what he had to say about that.
Every day we walked out this year with our fingers crossed, and on multiple occasions found out throughout the day that someone was a close contact and wasn't able to practice for a week or be in quarantine. In fact, over the course of the last 2 weeks, we've had 11 starting positions who were quarantined. So it has certainly impacted our preparation and set us behind. But every team has been dealing with that exact same issue throughout the entire season. And I think we actually have come out of it pretty good compared to some other situations.
And, certainly knowing that the love of football in those two towns is so strong, I asked Don about, whether the whole aspect of these things getting together and all the groups and the civic leaders and the businessmen and the schools and everybody who's involved in it, whether it really was an indication of what this means to the fabric of the communities. And here was his answer on that.
I think it is, and I think it's special. Anything that lasts 100 years these days, I think, is incredible. And so it's special for that reason alone. But then to have the closeness of the two communities and to have it last this long and be a quality rivalry all this long makes it even more special.
Now, Mike Strachan, the coach of the Bombardiers, is in a unique position. He was the North Attleboro quarterback when he was in high school. And then he went on became a college coach for a while, and then came back to coach the Blue Bombardiers, who were seeking to get a shot in the arm because North Attleboro dominated this rivalry for many years. They won something like 20 in a row or something like that, some ridiculous number during most of my career at the Sun Chronicle. And so Mike has come back. The program is competitive. They've won, I think, 3 of the last 7 that were played on the holiday, and I think 4 out of 9 altogether, because they did have a couple of games in the midst of that when they had to play twice during the season. The way the Hockomock League split its divisions, Attleboro and North were in the same division, and the scheduling forced them to play twice, which they don't like in those towns. Believe me, they don't like. They even played a Super Bowl against each other, and nobody wants to refer to that at all in those towns. To them, the only thing that matters is Thanksgiving. Well, Mike, I think Mike understands that he's in a very, very unique position to see it, and he talked about that, and this is what he had to say.
It's something that you work your whole life when you're a young kid to work and want to play in this game. I grew up in North Attleboro and would come to Community Field and run around behind the stands and play with your buddies, but you really were waiting for the opportunity to play under the lights on Friday night for North Attleboro. And I've been able to be part of this at a very different level now at Attleboro, and it's really it's something that we've wanted to take pride in let the communities really get behind us. We know what this game means to us. We know what it means to North Attleboro, and it really is something that brings both of these communities together. Yep. I mean, it does. It gives us something to shoot for, and what a better time now coming out of the last year where these kids have been robbed of so much, and we've been able to give them something that they can now take for the rest of their lives when it really matters.
I wish them the best of luck in getting this game off. Saturday looks like it's going to be a good day. The game will start at 10 o'clock. North TV will live stream it. If you are interested in watching that, and I think it'll be a good game, even though they have disparate records. Attleboro's 1-4, but they did just win big over Canton in their last game. So they have talent on that team. It just hasn't. They had to hit the iron of the Kelly Rex division. Mansfield, Milford, King Philip. Some really solid games that they had that really for a team that was kind of reinventing itself from last year. It was a little tough, but the game will be on at 10 o'clock in the morning. As I said, Peter Gay, Jared Ware, Del Malloy on the call. Go to northtv.net and click on that. Go down to that red box on the side of the web page, and it says live streaming. Click on that, and then click on the community channel. That's the first of the 4 that you'll see, and that will be where you can find that game. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Again, enjoy these last games of this football season, and we hope to be back in September with more of them. I'm hopeful to get some baseball and softball in before all that, and then to have a restful summertime. Oh, it's not like I don't get a rest these days. I mean, like I said, I am not fully gainfully employed. The other thing is I can't find my bottle of... here it is. Use it. Love it. Keep using it. I just replaced the bottles in my car. I'd used so much of it on both of my cars. I just always keep it ready so that I can try to avoid germs and whatever else. And so just do that. Above all else, please pick up your masks. Don't throw them on the floor. Don't throw them on the ground. Don't throw them indiscriminately towards the wastebasket, but leave them there. There are people who have to come out here and pick them up and try to, it's just crude. It's low rent if you do that, and it's dangerous to people who you might have COVID. And if I don't know how long that stuff lives in a mask, but if somebody has to come out and pick up that mask and throw it in a wastebasket, who knows what they're exposed to? So don't do it. Just hang in there a little bit longer, please. More of us are getting vaccinated. It's getting closer. Maybe the numbers might start to come down again. At least I hope they do. This has been a rough year plus. Let's not muck it up now, okay? Please be safe, be smart, and take care of yourselves. Good night, everybody.